in the dental practice so that you can continue to do dentistry. And one of the things that really hit home with me early on was explaining, or when I learned through the Schuster Center, the difference in overhead and what a big difference that makes in not only your profit out of the business, out of the practice, but also the amount of stress and busyness that you have to go through to produce the dentistry. If you have a 60% overhead in your office, let's say that you go out and you produce $400,000 of dentistry. Well, with a 60% overhead, that means you have a profit of $160,000 per year. So on a monthly basis, that 60% translates to $20,000 a month that is going to pay expenses, that's your nut, and $13,000 a month in profit. Now let's just say that your overhead is not 60%, it's 80%. Let's say for whatever reason, maybe you've taken out a large loan for some equipment or something, or say you've signed on with a number of insurance plans where you have to reduce your fee or whatever, but let's just say your overhead is 80%, and this is very common for dentists, new dentists just starting their practice. In order to get the same amount of profit as the previous case, you have to produce $800,000 to get the same $160,000 of profit. So you have to double your production. That means every day, instead of doing 2 crowns, you have to do 4 crowns. Or whatever it is that you're looking at, your fillings, you have to do twice as much. So there is a tremendous amount of stress, and this kind of goes back to that first situation, the 2 different dentists, of how much harder you have to work to net the same amount. So it's really, really important to be looking at what your net profit is, what your overhead is in the practice. And as you get into this more, when you actually start working, you might even start looking at your hourly profit and your hourly costs. The nut for an 80% overhead, your overhead spends $53,000 in a month you have to produce and collect in dentistry just to stay in business, just to survive, and yet you still net the same amount. So the bottom line is income does not equal wealth, and this is another lesson that I've learned, and I've seen this not only in dentists but many professionals, doctors, lawyers, is they earn a lot of money, and that money gets spent. They don't really know where it goes at the end of the year, but because they're earning a lot, they think they're wealthy. Well, what wealth really equals is an increase in net worth every year of about 10 to 15%. That's how you measure if you're gaining wealth. A couple comments on the cost of money. You can look at these numbers maybe quickly, but a $100,000 loan, if you pay it off over 10 years at 7.5% interest, your monthly payment's going to be $1,187,000 a month for 10 years. The total interest over the life of the loan is $42,442. If you go for the bigger model, bigger, faster, whatever you're going to get, and you double your loan, you can see that the monthly payment is twice as much and paying a significantly greater amount of interest. So is the magic of compounding working for you or against you? Try to get the magic of compounding working for you as soon as you can. And some of you, if you have some experience with financial planning, you might have heard the story about the guy who starts saving for his retirement when he's 25. And he saves $2,000 a year for, I think it's 7 years. And he stops saving when he's 32. And he just never touches that money, and he lets it build until he's 65 years old. The other fella doesn't want to save early on, and so he doesn't start saving until he's 32. He has to save $2,000 a year, every year, for the rest of his life until he's 65, and he never catches up with the smart, Dr. Smart, who saved for 7 years. So get the magic of compounding working for you. I think I went the wrong way. Power account. A power account is a savings account for your dental practice. And I have a couple of colleagues that have studied with the Schuster Center, and They have followed through on some things, other things they haven't kept up with, but this is kind of the one thing that's universal that everybody just loves. They said, man, I did that power account, and that is just the best thing that I ever did. That has made a huge difference in my life. So what we're promoting is that you save 10% of all your dental practice income and put it in a separate bank account called a bank account or a power account, and just watch it grow. And just get in the habit of doing that every month at least. And there's so many benefits that come from that. The peace of mind that you get down the road of knowing that you have a large amount of savings to help the practice in case of an emergency, in case you're disabled for a short period of time, in case there's an economic downturn in the economy. You're still going to be able to keep your team and meet the payroll, pay your expenses, pay your personal expenses. At one point, after I had been funding my power account for 7 years, I had enough money in there to kind of pay all my expenses for a year and a half. And so I made a decision to handle insurance a little differently in the office. And one of the PPOs, we just stopped participating in that. And so it can give you eventually freedom from slavery to insurance. It'll allow you to take significant continuing education courses, some of the really high quality workshops like Pankey or Dawson or Coyce or Spear, where you go for more than just a week and you really learn something that you can implement into your practice. Training your team. As you get into this, been in practice for a few years, you may feel, or you'll learn quickly, that just getting organized gives you the biggest bang for your buck. But in the long term, if you can train your people, that offers huge rewards. Dr. Schuster talks about, you get enough in your power account, take a vacation, take a month off, enjoy yourself. You've earned it, you deserve it. Long-term needs like retirement, and eventually you get to pay cash for equipment purchases versus financing. And remember, we talked about that. It's one thing to go to a bank and ask for a loan to buy equipment, and you have no savings. They're going to charge you the highest interest rate because you're a big risk. It's a different thing to go to the bank and ask for a loan, and you already have the bank or the money in the bank as collateral. You say, I can pay for that cash if I want it right now. You can usually negotiate a rate on your loan that's significantly to your advantage. Lastly, we're going to close with a few comments about cash flow analysis. What do I need to know to start a practice? What information does the bank want in order for me to get a loan? And as a new associate or a new owner doctor, how much income can I expect to pay for my business and personal expenses? So just like to have you be familiar with the concept of a business pro forma. A pro forma is something that's very common, again, across all businesses and financial planning. And it's just a simple projection of your expected performance on a financial basis. You know, what are you going to produce? What are you going to collect? And what are your expenses going to be? So that you can realistically evaluate financial opportunities that come before you. You know, if you go into a practice as an associate, what can you kind of plan as a business pro forma? Does this make sense for you financially to get into this arrangement? Or purchasing a practice, or purchasing equipment, or hiring additional staff. It's just some real simple arithmetic to kind of help you understand if it makes financial sense or not. It ain't rocket science. And this is just a simple sample of something. Whenever I brought an associate into my practice, I asked them to develop a pro forma for me just for their first year of practice so that they could kind of have an idea of what they were going to do and what the cost was going to be. And you can just kind of, and the bank is going to require this in most cases for them to give you a loan. So just looking quickly there, we just showed 6 months. For example, what are you going to produce in January? What are you going to collect? You're going to have to pay a dental assistant, have some rent, your loan if you took out a loan, supplies, lab, miscellaneous things, marketing. You can see that early on in the first few months, you may be operating in the red, and you may have to increase whatever loan you get just to cover some personal living expenses, to pay your rent and to buy food so you have something to eat during the day. Some of these don't change as time goes on. Some of them will change. You know, hopefully your production and collections are going to go up. Your fixed expenses stay the same, so hopefully you get in the black very quickly. And it also helps you when you go to say you're going to look for an associate position. It gives you some topics for discussion with the owner doctor. Some associates, they pay for their assistant, and so you get to hire your assistant. Other situations, the owner doctor pays for the assistant. Are you going to be paying your lab bill, or is the owner doctor going to be paying the lab bill? So it's really nice if you can discuss these things ahead of time rather than wait until after and create bad feelings because you just forgot to talk about it.
And Tim, again, so many people have difficulties in their associateships, and quite frequently I think it's just because these things are not understood, talked about, predetermined, and I just would encourage you, especially if you're thinking about an associateship, to really address these issues, look at them, be as confident as you can be in how you think things ought to work, and see if you can find a situation that feels right.
Great. So we're just going to kind of wind up here with our conclusion. And the decisions you make about money require some good thought because they profoundly affect your quality of life for many years. And what's attractive in the short term, you know, having some fancy equipment or doing something that just seems great can steal your wealth over the long term. In fact, over the long term, the typical dentist earns between $20 and $40 million in practice revenues, which is a lot of money. Yet the ADA statistics show that fewer than 4% of dentists can afford to retire at age 65. So it's pretty important how you handle these things. And thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening. We hope you find this useful. And feel free to follow up if you'd like more information in a similar vein. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Tim.